Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the 7th YouTube session of the 11th fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. My name is Anusha Kandasivam, and through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 17 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser. We have lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little bit later. But meanwhile, if you want to find out about the Pixel Project, please go and visit our website, www.thepixelproject.net. All right, we have a really special guest today. We have national best-selling and award-winning author Cerece Rennie Murphy. Hi, Cerece. Welcome.
Hey.
So just a really quick bio. Cerece has published 12 speculative fiction novels, short stories, and children's books, and is the founder of VirtuousCon, an online sci-fi and comic culture convention that celebrates the excellence of BIPOC creators in speculative fiction. She has received numerous awards, including the Science Fiction Writers of America's Kate Williams Solstice Award for significant contributions to the science fiction, fantasy, and related genres community. It's so great to have you with us, Cerece.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
All right, so aside from joining today's Read for Pixel session, Cerece has also really generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have set up as perks for donors on our Rally Up fundraising page. So let me tell you what they are. So goodie number 1 is Cerece Rennie Murphy's Magical Fantasy Books Plus Tote Bundle. So Cerece is generously giving away one bundle of her acclaimed fantasy novels. This includes those books over there. Hardcover special edition of In the Garden of Light and Shadow, that's book 1. Paperback edition of the Wolf Queen duology. I love that cover. It's really awesome.
Me too.
Yeah. And paperback edition of Between Two Seas and a really special tote bag. You have the tote bag there? Yes, read fantasy. And the second bundle is Cerece Rennie Murphy's science fiction books and tote bundle. So there's one bundle of her acclaimed science fiction novels for one Read for Pixels donor in the US only. That's one Order of the Seers. That's the one there. The one of the Order of the Seers trilogy. These are paperback editions. One paperback edition of Between Two Seas, and one tote bag. And that's about read science fiction. So these are 2 separate bundles, and both bundles are available to donors in the US only. All of this really amazing swag is up on our Rally Up fundraising page. And yes, the link has gone up in the chat box in YouTube. So just go click the link and go and get your hands on one of these bundles. We've raised $3,335 so far towards our $5,000 goal. So please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Before we get on with the reading and the Q&A, I just want to say that you, the audience who are watching, you can ask Cerece questions as well. Just make sure you're logged on to your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box, which is on the right-hand side of the YouTube screen. And Jay, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay the questions to us. Okay, Cerece, tell us what you're reading today.
First of all, thank you again for having me. I'm so honored. Everybody, there are, you said 17 authors?
Yes, 17.
17 authors until October. They're signing books. They've got like all kinds of cool stuff. We need to band together to support this incredible organization and this cause that impacts every single person. So as I'm reading, because you can click and listen at the same time, what you do, go to the link, $5,000. We got this in the bag. We could do this. So I just want to encourage everybody to support, because everyone knows someone who has been impacted by violence against women. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this. And I want to thank you again and encourage everybody to give as generously as you can. But while you're doing that, I'm going to be your background reading. I'm going to be reading from my duology, The Wolf Queen. This is the first book called The Hope of a Fairy. And I'm going to be reading from the prologue of that. And I wanted to talk about like what inspired this book. Um, I was actually listening to Nelson Mandela's favorite African folk tales, and there's a story called The Wolf Queen in it. And originally I thought this was going to be like a retelling, but it's not. But it's about a young woman who lived alone in the forest. And I thought, wait a minute, okay, how in this ancient society does a young woman live alone in the forest? And this is the answer to that question out of my imagination. But really, the book explores the power of women, who, in my opinion, are the most amazing, powerful beings on the planet, and how we have become so hunted, so maligned, and so endangered, given that we have such incredible power. And that's really sort of the question that I'm grappling with in this book. And it starts in the prologue with this story of Afiri, who is the last sorcerer of Elan, which is where the story takes place.
All right, go
So
ahead.
should I get going?
Yes, go on.
All right.
Put you on screen. Okay, go for it.
All right. So while you guys are clicking, you can listen to this. All right. When I think of my childhood, it is hard to recall a time when Safaro was not at my side. Though he was a year older, we did everything together, pulling up weeds from the garden that I would feed him until our bellies churned, carrying pails of water, competing to see who could pick the most blue greens or pluck the highest sparrow fruit on the tree. In faith, he was, as all the boys, other boys around me, a brother, but in truth, he was much more than that. We shared our first kiss at the dawning of our adulthood and caressed our mature bodies under the sheltering leaves of the soursop tree until we were slick and giddy with excitement. I planned to love him forever, but it was not enough. When he asked me to marry him, I laughed, a high, breathless sound that carried no weight at all. What nonsense is this? I asked, trying to squint past the sun in my eyes. I felt sure he was making fun of me, the way he always did. It was only when I did not hear his laughter with mine that I shifted my gaze to see his face. He was not smiling back at me. I had hurt him, though with all my heart I had not meant to. Confused, I reached for him. Safi, what have I done? Tell me. Is my love a joke? Speak truly, Afiri. I speak truly, Afiri. I want to be with you. And I want to be with you alone. I am with you. I'll always be with you. I still did not understand. I have been accepted into the Guild of Welders, and I'm almost a man, Afiri. My smile felt tentative as it tugged its way across my mouth, but I closed the distance between us. Slowly, I stroked the taut muscles of his abdomen, then rested my hand on the knot that held his pants in place. I know, I answered, searching his eyes for the openness that had always been there. His hand came over mine, hard and unmovable. Listen to me, Afiri. I want more than this. I want us to be together. I want someone to bear my children and raise them. I will have our children, and we will raise them together. Slipping my hand away, I gripped his face between my palms. You know I want this too. Not finding what he wanted in my eyes, he turned away. I want a wife, Afiri. A bitter taste spread across my tongue, but my heart refused to focus on anything but trying to unravel the meaning behind the words I could not fathom. The Amasidi do not marry. You know this. Only then did he turn to me, wild and desperate. He grabbed my hands and squeezed hard. Then renounce them and come with me. Be my wife. Renounce them? I felt the bile rising, mixing with the taste of fear in my mouth. I am them. You asked this as if I could step out of my own skin. His expression turned hard as he dropped his hands. You think because you are Amasidi that you're better than me, he yelled. I was not prepared to defend who I was to anyone, least of all him. Still, I tried, struggling for words I've never had to speak before. I am different, than you are, not better. We are meant for different things. Why? I could learn the dances. I know. His voice cut off. I did not realize that I had stepped away until Safaro extended his hand and I was out of reach. What do you know? Knowledge is not wisdom unless it is proved, Safi. You have not been given this power. You have other gifts. I remember how his eyes, his whole being, seemed suddenly cast in shadows as he stared back at me. If you loved me as I love you, you would do this for me. The pain swirling in my belly froze at his words, anchoring me to where I stood. I would never ask you to be anything other than who you are. I have loved you since I was old enough to know what love was, just as you are. I would never ask you to change. How can you ask this of me? I want you to belong to me, only me, as a wife should. The words were like lightning in my ears, burning away something between us forever. I do not belong to anyone. Even in the Amasidi, we choose to be mothers. Our first duty is always to be in possession of ourselves. It is the one thing we can never give away. God was in me, and I was my own center. Safaro walked away from me that night, full of anger and hurt, and though I cried where I stood, I did not reach out, and I did not waver. He left the next morning. I did not see him again for many years, but I always knew that I would. After Safaro left, we continued to understand our gifts and share our wisdom with those we served. Within the villages, there was no need for jealousy. All we had was shared. Because of our reputation as healers, we were rarely, if ever, feared. But for some, the events of my awakening became a herald of the Amasidi's growing power and how that power could be used in the hands of those who coveted it. The first attack I'd ever heard of came from a village in the southern province of Kavir. I was well into my power by then, a woman of 23 years. It was said that a man, a stranger from a northern village, by his garb, had touched a mother without her permission in the market square. At first, I hardly believed it. None of us did. The ruffian was dragged away by the crowd, but when it came time for him to be brought to the elders for judgment, he was nowhere to be found. Rumors spread that the assailant had been an ayat, an evil spirit that vanished into thin air. But the mothers knew that this was not so, for evil is born of the earth, the actions and consequences of man, pushed out like a spitting cauldron. In our own way, we are all creators of light and darkness. A true spirit's only power is to create light and illuminate what is misunderstood. Sometimes the truth can kill, but that was not what happened in the marketplace. The trespasser only meant to take what was not his, seeking to steal the amulet worn by each mother as a symbol of the earth's willingness to bind its power with hers. At the time, it did not occur to us that someone might have helped the criminal escape. The mothers pondered and prayed for clarity about what this infraction could mean. In our deliberations, our dance began to take on more rigid lines of protection and defense. More and more, we danced with our eyes open to the new possibility of prying gazes, the notion of needing not just keep, but to defend our secrets was born. But defense was not a concept that came naturally to the Amasidi. We were created to give to the world. Our training, our knowledge, rituals were all done in service of the power we were given, and it was our duty to see that it was put to the best use. We served those around us with love and openness. In return, they gave us their trust, heeded our counsel, and respected our ways. I do not know when or how word of our power, of my power, reached the here, but by the time I learned that it had, there was no uncertainty about who brought our secrets to him. There were rumors that men had stolen our dance rituals to create a new kind of power, a poison created through metal and fire that could control or command our will. Things began happening that had never happened before: harassment, threats, rape, murder. Mothers were rarely the victims of these attacks, but they were always the targets. By then, the Here knew our true weakness: the people we loved, the communities we served. And as the Here's cruelty spread from the South without mercy or reason, the order of the world was lost. Horror seeped into our lives until we were surrounded. When the Here rode into the first of the villages at the northern tip of Kavir, demanding submission of the mothers, the Amasidi refused until we understood the price that those around us would pay for our defiance. He started with the youngest child in the village. It was expedient as it was cruel. To protect those whom they had always served, the mothers accepted the bondage of the poison chains that allowed the Here and his emissaries to use the mother's power as their own. Children stopped reaching for the safety of their parents' arms because they knew that their mothers and fathers could no longer protect them. Instead, we were forced to send them away, scattering our future to the winds and breaking the will of our people. As the news of the Here's coming spread, the villages became unsafe for the mothers to inhabit. Those willing to break faith with the Amasidi traded their decency for the baser needs of food, shelter, and the hope of protection. Those who resisted were killed, enslaved, or tortured to madness, their lives left in ruin. By the time the mothers thought to use their power to fight, it was far too late. In truth, we had never organized our power into a force of destruction before. We were created by Amalaki to bring and create life. Becoming a vessel of war was unthinkable. So when the Here began taking the Amasidi, many of the powers he sought to corrupt could not be used to his advantage, but they kept searching. Many mothers chose to ascend from this life, which was their right as keepers of the way, rather than see their power exploited. I could not. I knew deep within me that the mother had made me different for a reason. So when Safaro came for me, I was not afraid. The truth can sometimes kill, and I knew that I would find a way, even if it cost me my life. I called on each of my sisters within the temples to send me the youngest of our awakened, all those with talents in water, earth, and anything related to animals. They were to be stripped of the blue silk gowns that would identify them as Amasidi and come to Alan alone, with only a trusted male to carry them who would pose as their father. As I helped each of them from the carriages where they'd hidden on their long journeys, I looked into their young, guileless eyes. I had said nothing to them, yet somehow they knew. Like me, the mother had made them different. They arrived frightened but determined, with just enough time to hide them before Safaro slipped past Elan's defenses, disguised as the prodigal son returned. When I finally saw him walking towards me again, I knew that almost no trace of the boy I loved had survived. His face was sunken and pockmarked from what I guessed was too much of the Here's rich food and not enough of the grains and vegetables that kept the Amasidi strong and youthful long into our lives. He knew better, but had chosen to trade what was proven for a soulless power that answered to neither knowledge nor wisdom. I knelt before Safaro as I swore I would never do when we were children, and accepted his chain, then watched as his pride swelled, eclipsing any possibility that he would discover my plan. Blind purpose and certain victory propelled him forward without the slightest concern for why a woman who had defied him every day of her life would have surrendered so easily. I bowed my head and followed him, prepared to betray everything I knew to preserve the hope of what we could become. Like a slave, he brought me dutifully to his master. We snuck past the gates of Elan to the Heer, who sat outside the battlefield on a tall white harumbas that was draped in blood-red velvet. The Heer spared only a second to regard me with contempt before sending me with Safaro to the center of the battlefield, where our right to exist would be decided. All around me, from every corner of our world, the people of Yet fought against the tyranny of the Heer. Closing my eyes, I could smell their desire to live, to protect their loved ones, and see them survive past this day, as if the earth itself was calling out to me. Once again, I looked to Safaro for any sign of the boy I loved, but he was nowhere. He knew, as I did, that while their resolve was as hard as iron, the people of Yet were not warriors. Worse, we'd only had months to prepare. From the power-crazed look in his eyes as he surveyed the battle, I knew that the Heer had been planning the expansion of his kingdom his entire life. The final battle came to our doorstep just outside the city of Elan, where our defenses had held as fiercely as they could, but it was only a matter of time. The people of Elan, the peoples of Yet, had given no ground easily, with mounting casualties on both sides, but the Heer had too much of everything we lacked: weapons, men, strategy, and the most powerful Amasidi at his beck and call. With me at his side, they pressed forward. The poison chain connected my will to Safaro's, so that the power between us acted as one, except only I understood the true meaning behind the Heer's command to create an earthquake that would swallow his enemies. Safaro could wield my power, but only I could give it purpose, give it the purpose that would call it into being. I knew what the Heer's soul was meant to be. His greatest enemies were not in front of him. He was surrounded by them, masking the truth of his insanity behind greed and false adulation. And so when I spread my hands wide and bellowed across the sky, "I am the sorcerer of Elan, now and always," I did what I was born to do: create. The boats of Elan were just out of range, harboring the men, women, and children who were unable to fight. Only the strongest were allowed to keep the front. It would be difficult for them to escape, but they had a better chance than anyone who was not privy to my plan. I felt the fissure crack open far beneath me, then bubble up and break into a diagonal energy just 100 feet from where I stood. The fissure would only hold for a few minutes, announcing itself as a warning of things to come, so that my people would have some time to retreat before the fault folded back on itself and consumed everything standing. Safaro watched with satisfaction as the people of Yet began to run. He did not understand until he watched them forego the high ground of Elan and run into the sea. He rushed forward just as the fissure we created together broke open into a chasm that pulled the dirt right out from under the Heer's army. The people of Yet scattered as the depths swallowed the Heer's front line. As soon as the last of my people were safe, I took it all. The land that held Elan to the shore of Yet fell away, allowing the water to rise up, pounding out new territory as it ripped through the battlefield. But it was not enough. It was only then that I understood that creation and destruction are often the same thing. As the sea claimed its prize, I opened up the foundation of Elan itself, breaking it from the bottom like an egg. The power of the sea did the rest, opening her arms to the island and in an eternal embrace that left only the tip of the land visible, with the children I had left there clinging to ancient trees. Fear, terror, and isolation had burned through their innocence, but in exchange, I had given them something else: a chance to survive and create something new, to evolve into sorcerers who were also warriors. As Safaro twisted the poison chain around my neck, I imagined I could see the eyes of all those Amasidi children and hoped only for their forgiveness. And in the burning light of my death, I ascended to the withering screams of the Heer and Safaro and all his murderous men, and was at peace.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Cerece.
You're welcome. I haven't
How-
read it in a long time. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was a really amazing prologue to an amazing story. And it actually brought up quite a few themes that we want to talk about today. So I'm going to go straight to the questions. Your books feature plenty of fantastic female protagonists like Lilavoie, Alessandra, Lily, Ada, Afiri, who we just met again in your reading. They are complex and they're also flawed and ultimately very human characters. And in many of your stories, there are girls and young women who discover that they have some kind of power, natural or otherwise, and then they go on to discover that their purpose or their destiny. How did the idea and inspiration for characters like these, who are so human in their mistakes but superhuman in their courage and their convictions, come about?
So the short answer is that I dream all my stories. And so I don't come up with them at all. Like I said, when I was listening for this book, when I was listening to the audiobook of Nelson Mandela's favorite African folktales, it really started with the question. I was just like, how is this girl alone in the forest? And literally the story came to me. I just try to write them down. So that's the shortest answer. The longer answer is that all my books are about one thing. They are about understanding your personal power, discovering what that is, and understanding how that serves you and then how you serve your community. Every single book I write is about that because that is the journey I'm on. I think as human beings in general, but particularly as women, often our power is defined for us.
Yes.
You know, people tell you what you're good at. They tell you who you are. And I think unleashing your power is about letting that go and discovering who you are outside of who people think you are. Because even no matter how expansive their idea of you is, it's still a boundary. But the act of discovering who you are is a boundless effort. And I think in people's knowledge of themselves is an act of unleashing that power. And then the question is, how do you use that power to serve your community? And so I think just from my own, because that's my own journey, all my books tend to be about that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, and quite inspiring to read about characters like that. Speculative fiction, which you write about speculative fiction of any genre, be it science fiction, fantasy, or horror, have their share of female stereotypes and tropes. In addition, your stories focus on characters who are women of color, so probably it's not a stretch to deduce that the risk of stereotyping is tripled when gender and race intersect. How do you break stereotypes to create female characters with agency who are dealing with the world around them, including situations that involve sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls?
I think I don't know women who fit a lot of the caricatures and stereotypes that I find so odd. I'm like, who is that? Who is that woman? You know, I grew up around strong, powerful, vulnerable, fallible women. And that's who I write. Those are the people that I know. I don't know women who often come across a hard situation and what shall I do? I literally don't know that. I don't know that woman. You know what I mean? And probably I probably wouldn't know that woman. I think particularly as a Black woman, those are not, rarely do we get to be in positions where we can just sort of not figure it out.
Yes.
And so I think it's not hard for me. Those things are just nonsense to me. I write like every extraordinary thing I write is based on probably something that I've seen some woman do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the example of Alam where she's literally creating like an earthquake. I mean, when you think about the history of women and the extraordinary things they've done as a group of people who have been subjugated and oppressed. I mean, it's just a metaphor. Women create earthquakes all the time.
That is true. Which brings me nicely to my next question. So your female characters, they're powerful, they're resilient and compelling in their individual ways as they face down all these difficult situations and they solve problems. But some readers might perceive them as unlikable. Do you ever feel pressured by gender and cultural stereotypes to make your female characters likable?
No, I don't think about it. Sometimes, I love a good villain, right? I mean, like, sometimes I think, like, one of my favorite characters in, like, Order of the Seers is Crane Ledoux, who is, like, probably an amalgamation of all, like, my worst fears. But he's, like, so relaxed about it all. I mean, and I think, no, because if I write them with compassion, you might not like them, but we follow people we don't like or necessarily understand all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it's a matter of likability. It's really a matter of, do you understand the motivation of why this person is doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
I mean, because from the prologue I just read, you might think she literally just stuck a bunch of kids on an island and drowned them.
Yep.
But you understand, and you might not like her for that, but you understand what she's doing.
Yes.
And you understand why she thinks she has to do it. And to me, that is more the point than a character that you necessarily like. It's really, is it true what they're doing in your mind? You know what I mean? Does it make sense what they're doing? And from that, and then if you're honest with yourself, you can relate to that. You know what I mean? You can relate to parts of yourself.
Have you ever gotten any flack for not making female characters likable enough?
Okay, so
do tell.
Here's the truth.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe I have, but I wasn't paying any attention. I mean, listen, I'm a huge reader.
Yeah.
And I believe that it is my job as the author to tell the story that I have been given. Because I already told you, I dream my stories. To the best of my ability, to tell the story that these characters want to tell to the best of my ability. And when I read it back, like I just did, and get chills, I have done my job. At that point, it is a cherry on top if someone reads my stuff, loves my stuff, likes my stuff, hates my stuff. Because even if they hate it, I have made you care about a character that does not actually exist, which is like amazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because I remember, if anybody watched Game of Thrones, like, oh, and if this is a spoiler, like, close your ears if you haven't. When Joffrey dies, I had the best day ever.
Yeah, we all did.
I was so excited. And I was like, now that's storytelling. This person does not exist. But like, I am so happy that this person is dead right now. I'm about to have a good day about a fictional character. So even if you hate my character, you want to flame me, I've made you invested enough to feel hate. And that's pretty special. You know what I mean? And so I'm honored by that. If you don't, as the reader, you have the right not to like my stuff.
Yes.
You have the right to not have it relate to you. And there's nothing I can do about that, because I am going to bring the story that is to the page. And then you will do whatever you need to do with that. And I am not invested in that part. So if you tell me I don't like your character or, this, that, and the other, okay. Like, you have the right to do that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But I don't care. Like, it's not going to change. I mean, I want you to like it, but like, I can't control that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure you hate the character that was supposed to be in the book. You know what I mean? Like, I did the right job conveying the character properly so you can hate them properly. You know what I mean? That's my job. And the rest, yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah. That's a great answer. Yeah, that's a great way to approach it. Yeah. So your stories, they all definitely pass the Bechdel test with their depiction of complex and interesting relationships between women. But there are a lot of stories out there that still don't. What can you suggest for writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically?
So if you have to be an observer of people.
Mm.
I would say, because there are people who are not women who write women really well, and then there are people who are women who, we're wishing for more. You know what I mean? And I think it's really about humbling yourself enough to really find out about the thing you want to know. Like, I enjoy writing male characters. I am not a man, but I observe men, and I try my best to hear them, that my male characters truly. And then if I was really worried about it, I would give it to someone, I would give it to my target audience then. Like, I would give it to one of my male friends and be like, read this.
Yeah.
And I've had some of my male friends who've read, like, we don't do that. You know what I mean? And then I adjust because he would know more about it than I do. And so if you're someone who struggles to write women, I would say, first of all, like, get out in a copy shop and like start listening. Because I think you do have to be, as a writer or as an artist, your first job is observation.
Yes.
Even if it's observation in your mind. Like, as the characters are coming to you, you're observing them, you're interrogating them so that you can know enough to reflect them properly. And so, whether it's in your mind or in the world, first of all, being humble enough to understand that it's about you, but it's not about you, and that you need to seek the truth of them, not the truth of you, but the truth of the character. And then check it with some women that you know who might read your work and let you know whether or not you got it right or you need some help.
Yeah, oh, that's good advice. All right. Okay, so we've been talking about women. Let's talk about men.
Yes. I love writing men.
Yeah, so male characters, there are so many different male characters in your books, and there are misogynistic, not so nice characters. Like we just saw Safaro, who wanted a woman to step out of their own skin and belong to him, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are also male and female relationships between main characters that are quite equitable and supportive, and your male characters who are respectful of women and their thoughts and their decisions.
Yeah.
Do you think that reframing how stories describe men away from hostile and toxic stereotypes and towards complexity and even vulnerability can be one of the ways that SFF writers can break away from toxic tropes and break away from promoting toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women?
Yes, absolutely. And my other option for reading was going to be Nasir, and Nasir is a perfect example of a man who understands what his strength is about. You know what I mean? And uses his powers for good. And I love him because he is very is so supportive of Amina and understands her need to discover and lead her own journey, even if that means it's not where he wants it to go. And I think that's a struggle, not just a male, it's a struggle of love. When you love something, you want to keep it. It's natural, but that's not always what is required of love. I think it's important in stories to just reflect a range of people. For men, I know again, I'm writing the men I know, the men I want to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way I want to see things, because I think in all of our stories, we're learning who we don't want to be and who we want to be. And so you have to have examples of both. I mean,
Yeah.
because there are examples of both in the world, you know?
Yes.
Rarely is everything all good or all bad. And I think there are men out there who do understand what their strength is about. And I love them, and I want to see them on the page
Yes.
as much as a good villain who might be a man or a woman.
Yeah, that's true. So, that brings me to my next question, which is, seeing examples of good people on the page. Stories are one of the most powerful ways of bringing about change, as cultural change. And so in a lot of speculative fiction books, the line between consent and coercion is not always very clear. Do you think this is an issue that spec fic has started tackling successfully in recent years?
Say the last part of that again. I'm
Do
sorry.
you think is this issue of consent and coercion is do you think speculative fiction authors have started tackling this issue successfully in recent years?
I'm going to be honest with you. The truth is, I'm not sure. I think just because it's very hard for me to read certain things. And so I tend to steer away from things where that's ambiguous. You know what I mean? Because it stays with me. Like stories, I live the stories that I read. And so I think across reading, I mean, certainly in romance, you know, it's going like every which way. I do feel like what I would say is there's more of an emphasis on agency
Yeah.
and like the arc of a character. So if you're just gonna write something that's toxic and the character does not evolve and the consent is and like the consent or lack of consent has to be an arc in the story. It can't just be like, well, this person is just a victim. You know, I do think that there's more of a requirement of an arc than there was before, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I also didn't grow up reading stories, and I certainly don't read stories where there is not an like there's not an arc.
Yeah.
Like that's just probably too painful a place for me to be.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah. How do you think? Um, how can authors strike a balance in their storytelling between raising awareness about violence against women while telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
I would say you have to focus on the reality and the humanity of the situation. The human, I mean, like it might be aliens, right? But like there's a there's a story behind this story, and that's what takes out the preaching. If you understand the story behind the story, you know, you have to. It's just like in real life. You see someone who's done something bad, but unless you know their story, you don't really know anything. You just know the thing they did. And so if you're reading a story where it's just the presentation of the acts without the story, then it just starts to feel like something surface. And what you want when you're talking about women and the history of, or alluding to, because you might not be talking about, but you're alluding to or referencing the history of violence against women, there is a story behind that.
Yeah.
And that's the part that you can then unlock the solutions. Because if you just know the what and you don't know the why, it's hard to solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's finding a balance between making it an integral part of the story and just not showing it gratuitously for no
Right,
reason.
right. Because then it's just horror, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not that horror doesn't explain the whys. Good horror actually does. But yeah, you don't. It's really the why. Like, where is this person coming from in terms of the abuser? And then why is this person taking this? But there are solutions in both of those things, but you're not going to find it in the act itself, because the act is the last thing that happens.
Yes.
The why is how you lead up to it.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah. All right. So, okay, I want to ask you a question about geek culture, since you run VirtuousCon. So, geek culture in general, including science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite a rising number of prominent, well-respected, and well-known female authors. And plus, there's still plenty of hostile and misogynist and sexist behaviors by male geeks towards female geeks. What do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books or cons, more welcoming for women and girls?
I think there needs to be a culture of accountability. Like, I remember going to one of my earliest times going to New York Comic Con, and there were, people dressed in all kinds of ways, right? Both men and women and them. All just dressed different types of ways. One of the things I loved about that environment, and I continue to love about it, and I know this isn't everyone's experience, but it was mine, and it's an illustration of what I mean by accountability. Like, I saw a girl was dressed in very little. And this guy comes up to her and starts to, like, proposition her, I guess. And the other men around her pushed him back. And as she walked, like, they created a perimeter around her. That's what I mean by accountability.
Yeah.
Like, because this didn't start with her and her dress, whatever she was wearing. This doesn't start with women defending themselves. Again, that's the what. The why is what happens before. And that, I think there needs to be a whole culture of accountability, because women are always fighting to defend their person, but I think the men, they need to go get their boys. Like, really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is not actually our problem to solve.
Yes.
We are literally just walking through the world.
Yeah.
And I loved that. That's what I mean by accountability, because men are in spaces with only men. Men are having conversations they're not having with us. And that is where, in my mind, the greatest change can happen. Now, sure, if, somebody leaks through the cracks, I'd love to see us, learn how to break more noses. But that's ultimately not going to solve the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't solve a problem of violence with violence.
It's not our problem to actually solve. It's their problem, because we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
They have a problem.
Yeah.
And often we get put on, like, we're supposed to solve their problem. And I'm not here for that.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of solving the problem, parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. As a mother yourself, what do you think that parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations, and to get boys involved in helping to make this change?
It's creating expectations early about what is and is not acceptable. I'm blessed to have a son, and I'm blessed to have a daughter. And, creating early, because he grew up around, and it's interesting, like, his dad grew up in a house full of boys, just like his mom. Yeah. And he had a different sensibility. It was sort of, he had this one woman, his mother, who he's relating to and understanding women through, but my son has both his sister and me, and creating a sense of expectation around joint accountability. Like, he's responsible for his actions.
Yeah.
And because I think the narrative is also often, again, like I said, it gets turned into women's problem. We're responsible for what men do.
Yes.
Somehow. You know what I mean? And creating the idea in boys and in girls that everybody's responsible for their own behavior,
Yeah.
not somebody else. And I think that's something that is honestly missing from the awareness of so many like young men. And if I could share a very personal story, then my son would probably be horrified. He's not going to watch this. So, do we have time? Is that okay?
Yes, you go ahead.
So, my son is recently started college, and in order to before he could get on campus, he had to take some trainings, some videos, and he on drugs, and but there was one on sexual violence and assault.
Mm.
And he was like, "Oh my gosh, mom, this video was like 20 minutes of me listening to this guy talk about how not to be disappointed if the girl doesn't want to have sex with you." And he was
What?
like, "What kind of nonsense is this?" And I said, "Well, believe it or not, there are men who think that they're entitled
Yeah.
to sex with." He was like, "What?" He was just like, "What is this nonsense? Like, you're gonna," and as young folks say, he's like, "You're gonna crash out because some girl doesn't want to have sex with you? Like, get over it." You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not an entire, like, why is that something that you are expecting? And then he's like, "Who would think that? And why do I have to watch this whole video on what is clearly obvious?" And I'm like, it's not obvious. And the school, I guess, is trying to deal with the sort of the whys of why someone would then try to push themselves on some young woman. That he's disappointed and he has his feelings, and so. But again, it's like, back it up. Back it up. Why is the expectation that that is something that he is owed? Like,
Yeah.
can we start there? And he was just floored. He was just floored by that, and actually quite like offended that someone would think that he was owed somebody's sex, and that someone like that is in the ether. He was just like, "What is happening? This is dumb."
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's the reality. I said, you're going to get to college and you're going to learn that up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are a lot of men out there who do believe that they are owed or they're entitled.
They're entitled.
Yeah, that women are responsible for their feelings.
Right. And so it's interesting to think about this video about like how to manage your emotions around your disappointment. Can you imagine a video for women about that?
Oh my goodness, we don't need one series. Yeah, we learned how to do that very early on.
Very early.
Yeah.
And so again, it's about setting the expectations of who's responsible for their behavior. And it's you. The spoiler alert, you are responsible for your behavior. And we don't do a good job of that. So now when we get to college, we got a 20-minute video about how to manage your disappointment about your absurd sexual expectations.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting story. Very, very thought-provoking.
It is very, but I was proud of him because he was just like,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Who am I going to school with? I'm like, you're about to find out. And as you see these things, I want you to bring this same energy.
Yeah.
To the girls at the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As you're looking at girls at the party, as you're, walking your female friends home, after practice or whatever it is. I want you to bring this energy because that's who she's dealing with.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank goodness that there are young men in the world like your son. There is some hope yet.
There's lots of hope. There's lots of hope. It's just that, he's not he doesn't have a podcast, screaming about the inferiority of women. But there are lots of, all his friends are like that. I mean, it's a beautiful little nerdy bunch of boys, but like they're all like that, I mean, and there are more of them. If I know them, they're out there. They're just not on the podcast they're at home struggling. My son is right with statistics. You know what I mean? Like that's where they are, hoping that one day they'll, they look forward to getting a girlfriend, but they feel entitled to it, And yeah, they're on the game with their friends, sketching anime.
Yeah.
They're there. They are there.
Maybe they should start a little Geek Boy podcast.
They need to start a podcast. It's hard for them to manage it with their schoolwork. See, the people who are out there who have plenty of time, trust me, they're not struggling with too much. They need. Yeah, that's why they got all that extra time and all that extra anger.
Yeah, to Ben.
Yeah.
All right, so we've come to the end of the session, more or less. I'm going to ask you my last question.
Sure.
So you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. So I'm going to ask you a kind of Captain Obvious question, but we ask all our authors this. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
There are many reasons. I think women are the keepers of our society. And the impact, first of all, no one deserves that. Like that's like first, second, third, and fourth.
Yeah.
But the role that women play in society, when you hurt women, you don't just hurt women, you hurt their families. You hurt the families they support, the children they raise, if that's a choice that they have, and limit the incredible power that they have to change the world. Because they have to spend their time tending their bruises and unearthing themselves from the crap that people lay on them. And that is incredible power that could be used to move us forward. And we are wasting that by holding back one of our greatest resources. And we can't afford that as a society.
What do you think that authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
I think that we can tell stories of healing, of bravery, of survival, and thriving. I think we can help. What I try to do is show people their power through my stories. Because I know for me personally, unearthing my power is how I've moved out of my own personal experiences with domestic violence.
Thank you so much for that answer, Cerece. And that brings us to the end of our session, actually. Thank you for giving us such great answers and sharing your perspective with us. I think we had a pretty good discussion today. So before we wrap up, I'm going to tell everybody once again about all the amazing goodies that you have donated to us. So, okay, everyone. So we have Dila Pitts has given us 2 amazing bundles for you to get your hands on. First is, sorry, I said Dila Pitts, didn't I? I meant Cerece. I'm so sorry. My notes have Dila Pitts in it. Cerece Rennie Murphy's Magical Fantasy Books and Toad Bundle. Cerece is generously giving away 1 bundle of her acclaimed fantasy novels. There they are. These covers are just so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
1 hardcover special edition of In the Garden of Light and Shadow, 1 paperback edition of the set of the Wolf Queen duology, and a paperback edition of Between Two Seas, and that amazing tote bag that we saw earlier. There it is. Read Fantasy, and 1 Cerece Rennie Murphy science fiction books and tote bundle, which contains her science fiction books, which is paperback editions of the Order of the Seers trilogy, a paperback edition of Between Two Seas, and the tote bag, which says read science fiction. It's great. Okay, so these are two different bundles, and both bundles are available for donors in the US. Now, if you want to get your hands on them, go to our Rally Up fundraising page. The link is up in the chat box right now, but I will also share a slide for everyone to have a look at. We also have plenty of more author goodies besides the amazing stuff that Cerece has given us. We have stuff from Catriona Ward, Chloe Gong, Kirsten White, Premi Mohammed, Robert V.S. Reddick, and we even have books from Penguin Random House. And new goodies will be released every week throughout September. Here is there you go. That's the slide. So we've raised $3,335 towards our $5,000 goal. The fundraiser ends in October this year, so make sure you go to Rally Up and check it out. The link is tinyurl.com/R4P Rally Up 2025. Yep, the link is there in the chat box. And if you want to learn more about Read for Pixels and all the other authors we have lined up, go to our Read for Pixels page on our website. The link is also up in the chat box. And you might be interested in some feminist horror poetry. You might want to get your hands on our award-winning Under Her Eye poetry collection that's published in partnership with Black Spot Books. You can get either the paperback or the ebook edition from all major booksellers worldwide, or find it on Black Spot Books' website. The collection comprises poems by 112 acclaimed female and non-binary poets, opening with Know to Be True by Bram Stoker Award winner Stephanie M. Witovich and The Writing Assignment by HWA Lifetime Achievement Award winner and SFPA Grandmaster Marge Simon. And it closes on a really powerful note with a map of the backyard by Bram Stoker Award nominee Jessica McHugh. And net proceeds from Under Her Eye go towards the Pixel Project Anti-Violence Against Women's Work. If you want to find out more about the Pixel Project and all the work that we do, go and visit our website, www.pixelproject.net. We have lots of information and resources and links. And if you need helplines, you want to find helplines in your country, go to nomoredirectory.org. It has a searchable database for almost every country in the world. And I think the link for that is going up in the chat box as well. All right, so we're almost at the end. I think, Cerece, you have some exciting news to share with everybody.
I do. My latest book, my 13th book, is coming out soon. It's In the Garden of Light and Shadow, the War of the Fallen, and it is the second book in the Garden of Light and Shadow duology. The first book is a part of the bundle, and so I'm really excited about it. I'm going through proofs right now. It should be printer next week, hopefully.
Next week. Wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so watch out for that, everybody. Go and get your hands on it when it comes out. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Cerece, for this amazing session. Thank you for all the stuff you've donated to us and sharing your perspective and everything is really great. And we'll say goodbye to everyone watching. Good day, good night, wherever you are in the world, and goodbye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.